here for Motors TV's exclusive coverage of the Dunlop Dubai 24 hours. And now we have that magical moment. It's night practice here in Dubai. We're going to see lots of action over the next 2 hours. Every car has to have every driver running in it over the course of those 120 minutes. That's 72 cars, an average of 4 drivers or 5 drivers a car. That's very difficult maths, but it's about 350 eager, besooted racing drivers about to take to the international circuit here in Dubai for night practice. It's going to be fantastic. And to talk us through, up in the booth, it's Jim Roller, Paul Truswell, but first, John Hindhoff.
Thanks, Nick. The Lamborghinis very expectant this weekend, those who follow the Raging Bull. They were somewhat usurped in qualifying, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in the next couple of hours, as the green flag has been waved on the starter stand just down to our right, and we'll see the first bright headlights heading towards us. Let me introduce the other voices, and you'll know them very well if you're an aficionado of Radio Le Mans, because RadioLeMans.com is in partnership with Motors TV this weekend to provide the English language talking bits as well, and we're also live at the circuit on the PA and FM service as well. Paul Truswell, welcome to the United Arab Emirates, to Dubai, and to the Dubai Autodrome night practice.
Do you know what? I'm not a bit tired. I'm all of gog and a gaggle at this because, yeah, I mean, it's just a lovely time of night, isn't it? I just wish I was outside and absorbing the atmosphere out there.
I'll give you a longer cable if you want.
Well, if it goes quiet, it's because I've nipped outside for a little while. No, I mean, there's always a magic that happens at sunset, and I say this is my first sunset in Dubai, and I'm not quite sure if we're actually going to get to see the sun go down, or whether it goes down behind us so we don't see it, but that'll be another reason why I pop out. I think it probably already has gone down, but no, I mean, it's one of those awkward times for a team, this, because 2 hours sounds like a long time. We heard Nick describing what's got to be done in this time. None of the times that are set actually count for anything, but what each team has to do seems fairly straightforward. Just send your car out and do 2 laps, but it's always at times like this that the driver comes back and says, actually the steering feels a bit funny, can you just have a look at it? And so they take the front off and they have a look at it, no, it looks all right, and they send out another driver and he comes back and says, the brakes aren't as good as they were when I had it earlier on. And all of a sudden you get this, what was a nice well-prepared race team suddenly turning into a huge job list.
Now, before we introduce you to Jim Roller, whose dulcet American tones you will also recognise, we need to clear up a little bit of business. When last you were with us on Motors TV, we were just coming to the end of the session. In fact, the checkered flag for qualifying had just gone out. However, pole position changed because there was a car out there that was still on a very quick lap. Was there not, Nick Damon?
John, yes, we had a man take pole after we'd gone off air, which is very naughty, Ron Bath. You should have realised we were having a half-hour break and slowed down. But anyway, he went for it. The all-Ferrari front row now, the FF course in front of the AF course. But much as I asked the AF team, you've decided to go significantly quicker than the base time. Why is that?
We had a split strategy in qualifying. I had 2 runs, and the first run I went marginally too quickly, by about 2.5 tenths of a second. So we did some number crunching, sat in the box for about 10 minutes, and then had a second run. And I had to go quicker than the AF course car, but not quicker than 202. So I had a margin of about 2 tenths of a second to play with. And when you're trying to manage 5.3 kilometres over 2 tenths of a second, you've got to be accurate. And it was a good lap and good enough for pole. I couldn't have cut it any finer. And it feels great to be sat on what is the head of a really quality field.
How do you do that? How do you get within 2 tenths of a target time, which isn't the fastest the car can go, or by any means a comfortable time?
I'm a kid, it's my job. Yeah, it's very difficult to do. Ian, my engineer, is reading split times out to me off the official timing screen. On the dash of the car itself, I've got split times appearing 3 or 4 times around the lap, so it's just careful management, but brilliant team result, and dead happy.
Fastest Ferrari, beating the AF course, and I understand there's a link between the 2 teams.
Yeah, two gentlemen drivers in the team. Leon Price and Jack Gerber are actually work colleagues at a big steel company called Max Steel, and I think there's a bit of elderly gentlemanly rivalry.
Gentlemen's Club rivalry. So the sort of rivalry that starts over a cigar and a copy of the Daily Telegraph and then ends up with someone going round the world in 80 days. That tends to happen. Let's move to this evening and night practice. Is it just a case of rotating the drivers through and going for tea?
Yeah, very much so. The job is done, and the team's actually based out here in Dubai. We did a 48-hour test in the middle of November, which allowed us to do lots of night running. Ferrari have developed a brilliant light kit for the car. A couple of laps each, take them off in race control, and as you say, go some tea.
Well done, mate. Congratulations on the pole, and it's an all Ferrari front row. But of course, I think we have other 6 or 7 cars in the top 10, John.
We've got 10 cars in the top 10. We have... sorry, mate, I couldn't help it. We have 6 different marks in the top 10, manufacturers in the top 10, which underlines the kind of international feel that this event has. Porsche versus Corvette we're used to seeing, but add in things like Audis. We're not used to seeing Audis in GT racing, certainly in ACO spec racing. The Ferraris in there as well. Lamborghini and BMW. Again, BMW we see in ACO rules racing, but not necessarily the Lamborghinis. And this is the essence, gentlemen, of GT3 style racing, and that effectively is what the A6 category is. And Jim, you know, we've been watching this now for a couple of days, and for a large chunk of today, this has been pretty full on. And what I'm very impressed at is how reliable and I'm going to have to find something wood to touch now. Yeah, my head as well. How reliable these GT3 spec cars are, because this has been a pretty full-on day with a lot to get through.
A lot of running, but a lot of running together. So not only have we been very good mechanically, we've been very good with driver etiquette and manners on the racetrack, or being silly or doing anything untoward. Nobody's making any major mistakes. Nobody's gotten caught up in anybody else's mistake. And that's easy to do when there's this much traffic out on the racetrack, with 71 entries. The nice thing about the second qualifying sessions were they were reduced down, so that eliminated some of the chances of that. But these cars have been running all day for the most part, and it has been pretty much worry-free. To expound on our makes, if you go to the top 12, you have 7 makes, because then you can count the Mercedes, which is qualified in 12th position, as another make that is in the race. And so that is quite an international lineup that we have. 2 Ferraris, then a Nissan, an Audi, Lamborghini, Porsche, Audi, Lamborghini, BMW, rounding out the top 10. So, Paul, that's just, you have to go to Nürburgring or Le Mans to find that kind of diversity normally.
I don't think you even get that kind of diversity. Well, you said don't get it at Le Mans. Nürburgring is probably a close match for this type of thing, and as yet at the Nürburgring they've not been that close. So no, I think this is certainly doing very well. I think the other thing which I find fascinating, although we're trying to persuade everybody that the Z4 BMWs are the favourites, I don't think there's a favourite. I don't think anybody would really put anything that they valued on a likely winner.
I would say any of the top 15 could win, and probably any of the top 20 could be podium finishers.
Well, that's a safe bet then.
No, I mean, I think it's.
And you know what? I still wouldn't let you put anything on that.
No, probably not.
Because we could be completely wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you, though, the other thing that really impresses me after we've heard from Rob Barth is and you're a man who likes precision and likes the technical aspects of racing, to the balancing and the bogey, to what we would call in America a bogey time, your minimum time, that balancing act, and then to go out there, and he says, I had a pretty good window, 0.2 of a second over 4 miles to get the pole, but not go too fast, and go under 2 minutes.
Well, as he said,
2 minutes and 2 seconds.
That's what he does.
That is amazing precision.
But that's what he does. Let's nip down into the pit lane. Nick Damon with one of the real success stories of the last couple of years here in the Gulf, the Saudi Falklands team, and one of the men behind that is Faisal bin Laden with Nick Damon.
Faisal, I'm going to ask you a question about somebody else first. Are you surprised at how fast the Ferraris have chosen to go?
No, I'm not surprised. I know that they could do this time. We saw it when they're doing the NGK Championship, so we know they're fast. But is it the best thing to do? I'm not too sure.
I mean, that's the key question, isn't it? They've decided to go. We all know you can go a bit quicker, but they've decided to put themselves ahead and take that penalty. Can you give us an idea of what you as the team are strategizing when you think about how fast to go?
Well, we're trying to go as fast as we can without getting any penalties, weight, or fuel. We're trying to keep consistent throughout the whole race, throughout the driver lineup. I think this is what will win or lose.
Will you actually be doing a complete fuel tank each time? I mean, does that fit in with the tyre wear? Does that fit in with the driver change? Or will you actually not use all 90 or 100 or 110 litres?
I think the tyres will change with every driver change. Driver change too. Better go with
That's just very good. He's stopping us from being run over by Janetta, which is very generous. So you've got the Z4 now. I mean, is it just a case of all of you going out and doing a couple of laps, or as this is a new car, do you need to get a lot of night data?
Well, it's good to know. How does it feel to be before the race? You don't want to get surprised going out and not seeing or seeing too much. So this is important to see.
And also, this livery is being designed to be particularly good at night, I believe.
Yeah, it's reflective, so it should look nice with the flashes of the camera. Should light up.
Right, so thanks a lot, best of luck. Indeed. So it is very much a dramatic livery. There's a nice bit of carbon fibre and the yellow and the green.
What you can't see in that shot is that the whole of the top of the car and the roof rails, as well as the top of the back. Oh, thanks, guys. That's great. You can see it's in unfinished carbon fibre, and the roof is the same, and the top of the rear wheel arches is the same. And those orange bits that you can see on the side of the car above the dark green will actually capture the light in the dark. They are fluorescent or reflective, at least. Just starting to see it on the rear quarter panel there, and it is a stunning livery. That car carrying the #1, of course, from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia by the Schubert Saudi Falcon teams. Schubert won this race last year with a similar car to that. It's not exactly the same. There are a few things different to that car. It's had some development on it in the intervening 12 months. It was the Need for Speed, the Shift Need for Speed 2 car last year, in black and white, if you remember. And that was the car that won. But it looks like it's up against some stiff challenges from cars that weren't here last year. And the Ferrari 458 GT3 wasn't available at this time last year. And it's making its debut here and has already proven, Jim, to be a very, very good proposition.
It certainly turned the trick during qualifying. It will be interesting to see how they are able to meet with their strategy, because besides the time strategy, Paul, you ought to be in heaven at this event, because not only are we dealing with the strategies of minimum times, but we're dealing with the strategies of fueling the cars, because while the tank may be one size, the amount of fuel you can put in at every pit stop is regulated. So you may have a 120-liter tank, but you can only put 100 liters in. So does that mean you can then stretch it on that last?
That would be the idea. As long as you don't go over 2 hours, though.
Exactly.
That's the other thing you've got to.
If you don't go over 2 hours, then you've got an advantage.
Well,
there's so much strategy in this race. It's going to be marvelous.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing you do is to use the course neutralisation periods, the code 60 periods, not safety car periods here at Dubai, but code 60 periods when everybody reduces speed to 60 kilometres per hour. You can use those periods to refuel as well. And so it's actually going to be virtually impossible for me to know, stood up here, how much fuel anybody has got on board at any one given time. The only way that we can plot the strategy really is to do it based on driving time, and because the maximum driving time is 2 hours, then no stint can go longer than that. But other than that, there's going to be very little in the way of me being able to predict what's going to happen, because there are too many unknowns, and that means for the team they've got to have some fairly smart people making sure that they don't do anything silly like run out of fuel or put the wrong tyres on.
Could they run a full 2 hours on a full tank?
At 120 litres.
I think that'd be hard pressed to do.
Yeah,
Depends how hard you're pushing.
I don't know how. If you're on a lap time which is way off the potential of the car, I mean.
Yeah, you could extend it that way.
Just saw the Nissan 370 in the pit lane there. That's the number 100 car, and we'll have a chat with one of its drivers in just a moment. Just hearing news from Liz Neville from RGN that they are going to be the first customer for the GT3 car from Nissan. The GT3 that's been developed here by JRM and Nissan. That the first customer will be the RGN concern, long-standing partner of Nissan, running the GT Academy winners since 2008. And from this season, RGN is known as RJN GT Academy, which means that Nick, being with the inaugural winner of the GT Academy, is more apposite than ever.
I love being apposite, but more than that, I like being in the company of Lucas Ordonez. Lucas, you're in Dubai, we're here, it's night practice. It's quite magical for us. Is it the same for the drivers?
Yeah, well, it's for myself, I really enjoy to drive in the night. Now it's quite cold, the tarmac is quite cold, so the drivers have to be really careful in the first laps. Everything went well. I really like to drive in the night. I really enjoy it, and that looks good for tomorrow's warm-up and then the race. So good.
How are you four GT Academy winners gelling as a team? Is you working well as a team? Do you like the car in a similar way? Do you like the car handling in a similar way?
Yeah, it's totally different than my LMP for last year, but I get used to it quickly, and the car is really, really well balanced in terms of overall grip. And yeah, we just work in the rear wing to get some more grip in the front, and that's what we did, and all went well in the qualifying. Nothing to do with the top guys in our class. They've got much powerful cars, so working pretty hard to have a really reliable car.
You're obviously used to sharing a car, you've been doing LMP2, but in fairness, you've always been the junior member of the team, Sai or Frank or who it may be. You're now the senior guy, so is it what you says that goes now as far as setup's concerned?
Yeah, well, I'm the most experienced driver now in this team, so my role in the team is a bit different than before in Le Mans and this kind of racing. But we have to work as much as we can, and that's what I'm doing. My feedback on the car was an understeering car, so we improved a little bit more the car with our setup. Everything okay, and in this team role, I feel really good, and the guys are doing a great job.
So, the four of you, when you go home tonight, you go to your, I assume, luxurious hotel, will you be having a bit of a race on the PlayStation somewhere between you all?
No, I don't think so. I need to rest. Today it's been a really busy day with all the team, with the media, with all the events we had. So I go home, have a good dinner, and to the bed straight.
Are you surprised how much we, as the motorsport media, in fact everyone, has taken this Nissan GT Academy to heart? We all feel like, obviously you're 20 years younger than me, but we could have been there if only our thumbs were slightly better.
Yeah, absolutely. This GT Academy program has been amazing, as you can see, and as you help us to make it better, no? So, nothing to say. We are proving that the results are amazing for all GT Academy drivers and winners. So, working hard for the future and to achieve more good results as Le Mans for sure.
Lucas, fantastic. Have a rest. Thanks, mate. I think it just goes without saying this is a fantastic program, and I just wish I was a much better virtual racer and 30 years younger.
there's no real answer to that, frankly. Thank you, Nick and Lucas Ordonez in the pit lane. One of the many Porsches that are with us this weekend. They do have one of their own classes. If you're not quite sure about the classes, don't worry. It's taken us a while to get used to it. If you go to radiolemans.com and click on the Dubai 24 download tab, you'll find that there's one of Nick Damon's Explains It All pieces on there that tells you all about the classes. Now, there is the GT3R we were talking about earlier on. That is the JRM Nismo collaboration. Notice it is right-hand drive as well, that car. This is its first competitive outing. JRM ran GT1 versions of this car to great effect in the FIA GT1 World Championship. In fact, it was the only real GT1 car out there as far as the regulations were concerned. And they're making these cars available to customers, as we said earlier on. And earlier on, Michael Krum was very, very quick in that car, and it looked for a while as though he might have stolen a front row spot, but was usurped by a couple of Lamborghinis. That GT3 car is a team of all talents, all champions in that car. Michael Krum, the fastest of them. And just doing a quick change there. Nick Damon has got Michael.
Michael, I mean, we've seen this car suffering a few teething troubles, but then you got the thing out in qualifying and banged it on third of the grid, so it must be basically a fine piece of kit.
Yeah, I mean, we had a tough start, as you said, to this weekend. And, but we know that the Nissan GTR is absolutely fantastic to drive. It performs well, and we are very happy that we could show that in qualifying. That actually, once everything runs smooth, it's one of the fastest cars out there. So.
Now, your teammates come from all classes of sport, but you come from driving the GT1 version of this car. Tell us the differences between the two vehicles.
It's a little bit heavier, the GT3 car, due to the regulations. It uses the road car engine, so it's a different engine. We don't have carbon brakes, but we have ABS, so still I have to say, it's not so different. And I believe if we work a little bit more on it, I think it's almost going to be down to the same speed. The potential of the car, in my eyes, is
an absolutely stellar GT3 field, and you're coming here with a new car. If it runs to the end, do you think you can challenge for a victory?
I certainly hope so. But in a 24-hour race, you never know what happens. We can run well, we don't run well, and there's so much traffic out here as well, and so many unknowns. So I believe we have the speed, and the team has the performance to do it. And if everything runs smooth, I'm confident we can be up there. Yes.
I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know. Have you done this event before?
No, it's the first time I do this race, and it's very exciting. I mean, I love the track, I love the organization. I think it's going to be a really exciting race.
It is an amazing circuit to drive. I mean, just because it's got so many different variations of corners or cameras, or just you've got so many cars on the track with you?
Well, yes. I mean, first of all, the track with its layout, it's very technical and very difficult. It has high-speed stuff, technical, complicated stuff, slow-speed corners. It has everything that actually a good track needs. And it's also wide enough and it is safe. So, yes, the traffic, it's tough, but the track's actually very good for heavy traffic. So it's actually down to us to not make a mistake and keep the car on the track without deflating.
As you said, the car's new, but you have probably the most professional and experienced driver lineup. How much an advantage is that to your team?
I think that's a big advantage. All the guys are super professionals, and I'm confident that we stay out of trouble. They all very much race experience with 24-hour races, all championship winners. So, I mean, it's the best package, the best teammates you can actually wish for a race like that.
Michael, best luck. Nice talking to us.
I think that's a fantastic point that Nick was making there, Paul, because that car has a real chance with its pace of actually winning this outright. Now, let's put the but into this. It is a brand new car. It isn't tried. This is its first major event, never mind first 24-hour event. but those guys have got the nous and the experience and frankly the skill to drive around anything that this race throws at them.
Yes, and I mean, while it is a brand new car as well, I mean, it's not like a brand new car that you've designed in your garage and it's the first time you've actually taken it out the back of your garage, is it? I mean, it's a development, it's an evolution of a road car. I mean, when I got my brand new car a couple of years ago, I didn't I was a bit nervous, but that was for other reasons. I didn't expect it to break down on me. And I think engineering, motor engineering, race car engineering, is generally of such a high standard these days that whilst, yes, you get problems, they are the problems that you can drive around or that you can fix quickly. They're not the problems that hopefully leave you stranded out on the circuit. I mean, without actually wanting to put a favourite onto this race, because I don't think it deserves one. I think it's too close for that. I think that driver lineup is so strong. The way the regulations have been written, they've got to do this lap time, and any other team which has a gentleman driver has got to do that lap time as well. Now, if you give an easy task to 4 people, there's a better chance they're going to make a good job of it than if you give an easy task to 3 people and a hard task to 1 person.
Note from the organisers here, and I know we're being listened to down in the pit lane on 87.6 FM and on the very efficient PA system here, that at 18:33 local, which is in a couple of minutes, 5 minutes time, any cars that don't have a lighted start number will get a black flag. So the door numbers must be lit. I noticed a number of people had those self-lit electro-phosphorescent ones that Audi pioneered a few years ago at Le Mans.
Everybody in the field has them here. It's another thing that just makes this event great.
Now, a little moment there for the 22 Porsche as he was trying to get into the pit lane, coming out of turn number 14, found himself on the wrong side of the track. He was too far over to the left and was very nearly collected by, I think, the Nissan GTR. Yes, it was the Nissan GTR GT3. It's not going to get complicated later. There he is in the pit lane. And that was a close thing out in the darkness. And now we do see, and you'll see from our television camera shots, that's the pit lane. That's perfectly well lit. The Ukrainian entered car coming into the pit lane, perfectly well lit. Some of the teams have got extra lighting over their pit apron areas. That's the front straight, and yes, you'll always get a little bit of flare because those headlights at one stage are coming directly towards the camera as they crest the brow. But look off into the distance. You can see there are patches of darkness out there, Jim.
Patch of abyss out there.
Yeah, there could be a lot hiding in that. Now there's the Black Falcon 23 car. They've got a couple of cars. Ooh, very surprised Nissan didn't manage to get that number.
Up to 59 cars out.
It's not good enough, is it? Because everybody's got to be out there. And so I wonder if there's
90 minutes to go.
Well, yes, I wonder if there's been a bit of horse trading in the pit lane. And people have said, well, if you're sharing a pit with somebody, do you want to go out early? And we'll go and have dinner. And then you come back in and we'll go out afterwards. It's a possibility.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Let me have a look with the binos down at the team catering area and see if there's very many people in there. Well, there's a few in.
It's probably media.
I think media have been in there constantly since the start of the meeting.
60 cars are now.
Quick flash of Mark Anish in there in the Porsche, and that is the 120 Nissan coming back in. It was Tanaka-san who set the time on that earlier, as Jim surmised. That
Mickey Maiden
is
ready to get in.
No. Yeah, that's Sticky getting in. It's a very distinctive helmet that he's got with that cracked sort of eggshell paint on it. So, Richard Maiden.
My dad had a 120 Nissan, except it was called a 120Y and it was a Datsun.
A Datsun Cherry.
Yeah, well, no, it was a precursor to that. It was the 120Y. That was all it was.
Was it the fastback or the four-door?
No, four-door. Dad, come on.
Okay. Well,
Should have been a clue.
in fairness, though, those cars, little sort of square and boxy, but all of the Nissans, and even those Nissans, as in comes on the end of the tow rope. Yeah. That is the 99 Porsche. Just back to the Nissan for a moment. We know people who raced 120s, all kinds of Nissans. Bob Heitzinger in his early racing career raced little 4-door, 3-box Nissans to great success in SCCA racing.
It still does today in vintage cars.
Exactly. He's got one back and done it up exactly as it looked in period, and it's one of the fastest things out there. Fantastic little thing. A couple of minutes before the unlit door numbers will cause black flags to be thrown. See, a lit door number on the 38, not a problem.
It's got to be on both sides.
Yeah, good call. That's the Aston. And as you can see again, the numbers on that door square are just slightly illuminated. Saw the guys fitting them on earlier today. It's not everybody drilling the panels, so there's quite a bit of gaffer tape being used around the bottom of windows to just go over the top of wires onto those numbered door, onto those illuminated door squares. And as Jim says, there's absolutely no reason for them not to be like that one is. Oh dear, and that is the pole sitting car that has certainly the left-hand side number not illuminated. You'd have thought that that would have just come on.
Well, it's only 1832 at the moment.
Ah, okay.
And it could be a situation where the connection has come loose.
Well, you'd think they would come on with the lights, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
it wouldn't be an extra flicker switch, but you never know. That's distinctive. There's a lot of cars scrolling across the bottom of our screen that haven't got them. Very distinctive light green LED strip above the window. There is the Z4 of the Saudi Falcons, and we might get a chance now in the darkness to see that.
It's also a great name. Saudi Falcons.
Saudi Falcons.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think we might get a chance to see that livery working well.
There's a chap on the start line gantry who's looking very worried at the moment because he's just wondering how he's going to show 48 cars a black flag.
Yeah, good point. If you
the 12 wasn't in the list.
Was it not? If you want to know what it's like behind the wheel of that Saudi Falcon Z4, simraceway.com have got that car to download and drive around. It is in the colours that won this race last year.
Now, I'm not a gamer.
Right.
That crazy pass. What's the difference between a sim raceway and
A console game.
Yeah, a console.
Laser scanning of tracks and cars.
So things are more accurate.
It's much more accurate. It's a tool that you can actually use, and you'll hear the guys. Now, don't get me wrong, and not to upset anybody, but the latest console games, we've seen how much work goes into them. We've worked with the guys in the past, and
and I've seen and tried yours at home.
Yeah, exactly. But when you talk about making the step from simulations, from console games, even the very best console games, to true simulation, then you're talking about an additional level of detail in terms of modelling the cars, the sounds, the tracks, and also with something like Sim Raceway, which is a full simulation community. Think of it as like iTunes for racing. Okay. Then you buy yourself into cars, but there is prize money up for grabs in races. So, Paul, what have you spotted?
Well, I was looking out of the window into the darkness and was blinded by a pair of headlights. Are they headlights, or is that a street lamp that's just pointing in our direction?
I think it might just be a street lamp.
I think it's just a street lamp, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's the pole that gives it away, isn't it?
Now there is the 12th car coming into the pit lane without door numbers lit.
But it has a nice sunscreen there.
It's got great sunscreen. If your numbers, look, lit numbers. If your number has to be lit, why wouldn't you just buy a cheap LED torch and tape it on the top and flick it on? Paul has one on his head.
Well, but this works so much better.
That
the car's out at night. I would love this in secret.
Lamborghini. Now that is dark. That is dark out in the distance there, and all kinds of stuff will be going on there during the race. Now, what I will say is we've seen the officials' office, and the CCTV here is absolutely without peer. Very, very good indeed.
The other thing that did impress me as well, I think you know, I spent a little bit of time in the timekeepers booth this afternoon. They're timing it with a staff of 4.
Really?
They have 71 cars, 24 hours, so they have a staff of 4.
That's 63 cars have gone out, gentlemen, so far. Sorry to interrupt.
It's all right. Let's. We were talking about the GC Automotive team earlier on, and the 106 team. That's the car that has a 3.5-litre engine. It looks rather like a VW Scirocco. Nick is down in that pit now to find out more about this very clever operation.
I'm with Kurt Diels. Kurt, we've been talking about your GC automobile car because it looks a lot like a Volkswagen Scirocco.
It's a choice by the team owners. You actually can put any shell on this car because it's one of their own designs, space-free construction. It's got a V6 in it. This one, sequential gearbox. But you can put any shell on it if you will. Now, why they chose Scirocco, we'd have to ask the team manager. But you can take any shell.
So what racing series would we normally find that car?
24-hour events like this, absolutely, because it is a prototype and it's running in the prototype class. So it's not a homologated car as they put it together. You can see the whole team here. If you stick around a while, they're very passionate about what they do. They know the cars inside out. The other car that they run is the same thing, space frame, has a V8 in it, 500 horse. You can put any shell on it you want. Maybe there was a former sponsor that decided that they had a Scirocco and a BMW, I don't know. So I'd like to see a Porsche shell on there.
You say Porsche, I noticed from the stickers and the patches, you're very experienced in endurance racing over the pond. What brings you to Dubai?
Okay, I used to race in Daytona 7 years while I was living in the States for the 24 hours with Porsche, Freisinger, Conrad Motorsports, and some private teams, and I moved to Europe. And I took up an old girlfriend of mine, the Nürburgring 24 hours, which I've done now 5 times. And I wanted to try something new last year and came here to Dubai. And fantastic experience last year. I was with a Dutch team, Ford Oyster. We finished 15th last with all kinds of hassles, but we had a great time. And so left a good taste in my mouth and I came back.
It's great. Talking to guys like you who really are what is the heartbeat of endurance racing, I'm very jealous. Nürburgring, Daytona, and Dubai. What's your favourite?
I have to say Nürburgring. It's a driver's track. You need some, excuse the language, big kahunas. You need to anticipate. You need to be ahead of the various situations that you're in. As everyone knows, Nürburgring, the old Nordschleife, changing conditions all over. Also, it complicates the race things. 220, 230 cars, big speed differential. So making it to the end at Nürburgring is a really special feeling.
Now, it's an interesting point you make because we have our resident statistical expert, Paul Troswell, up in the booth. Now, Paul has worked out that actually 70 cars on this track, concentration of vehicles is way above 230. That must be a real challenge.
It is a challenge, in particular because you got a good part of the track which is in the dark. You don't have the best visibility, and you have big speed differential. But you have a lot of runoff area, which you do not have at the Nürburgring. You make a mistake at the Nürburgring and hit one of the curbs, you're out. And then you have the factory drivers. They're all there representing the parks. They drive like bats out of hell. And there's very little room for everyone in some of those turns. So lots of accidents can happen. So yeah, there's a safety issue at the Nürburgring they got to watch out for. They got to sanction those who aren't respecting the rules. But it's a fantastic track. And here it's a different variable. A lot of runoff, but a very technical, very fun track to run.
Massively envious. Thanks for talking to us. And it's a good thing to see that having a Formula One standard circuit actually does work for endurance racing because of the huge runoffs in tarmac, John.
Yes. Talking about Daytona, another race you'll be able to see on Motors TV, more than half the race live with us pitching in with our talkie bits. That's at the end of January. Guys at Motors TV cranking up the endurance content again this year, kicking off in style here with the Dunlop 24H of Dubai. I do like that concept though of the, here's a tube frame car, here's the engines that it fits, slap a body on it that fits with your sponsor or you know, or your own particular taste.
Well, and I think most of the sponsors are going to want you to, you know, if you've got a manufacturer who's behind it, they're going to want the same engine in the car that matches the badge. You're not going to be putting a small block Chevy in there and then putting a BMW badge on it.
Don't think it matters at that point, does it though, really? Because I bet you the 5.
It would to them, it wouldn't to you and me.
I bet the 5.2 litre behemoth of a V8 in that BMW, I bet it's not necessarily got the white blue propellers on it. And the same for the 3.6 in the V-dub shape.
Right.
Now that is a Mercedes, and that does have a 3-pointed park star on the cam covers as it heads off into the darkness on the far side of the circuit from us. And Paul Truswell has rejoined us, headlamp and all. He's been studying various data.
Yeah, I've got a problem because I can't get my computer to work over here, so I have to go over there if I want to view my computer.
We'll run you along a cable.
Yeah, it's wireless or something. He doesn't like wireless.
We'll run you along the cable.
Well, that's very kind. No, I was just interested in previous results, and so I was really just looking up what had happened in previous years here, because I knew that the Schubert team car had won here last year, and in looking that up I discovered that it had done 594 laps, and so I thought, oh yes, I ought to find out what the record distance is. Record distance is, in 2010, 608 laps. So we've kind of got a benchmark there that's already been beaten, but 608 laps is the most that's ever been done in the 6 years that we've had this race thus far. And it was an IMSA Performance entered Porsche 997 that won in 2010. IMSA Matwood, that's right. In 2009, 573 laps were completed by a lapped Porsche. In 2008, I don't quite know what happened. It must have had a long time under safety car conditions or something. It was again won by a Porsche RSR. 504 laps were completed. 2007, it was a BMW Z4, funnily enough, entered by Dula Motorsport. 567 laps completed. And in 2006, the inaugural event, which was, in fact, a lot of the earlier events, I'd completely forgotten this, was sponsored by a different tyre company from what we've got now.
That's absolutely right. And what was the laps that year?
Laps completed 519, and it was another Dula BMW, but it was an M3 rather than a Z4.
Problems for the Writer Engineering Lamborghini number 25. Nick Damon is there. Have you had to get your spanners out, Nick?
Yeah, I'm afraid it's a case I think I may have need to bring my lump hammer as well. It's beyond gaffer tape. I'm with Bernard. Bernard, what's the problem with the car?
I was already in position to take over from Dennis, and he came in earlier than expected. And I just heard that they're losing oil, so he slowed down immediately. But there must have been some pressure left so that he could make it back into the pit. Now they will have to see what the problem is, but they don't know at the moment. I don't know whether they can fix it out here or whether they will have to take the car back into the pit.
Big pity, because this car obviously been going so well. We saw Peter to an unbelievably fast time this morning. What's it like driving in a team with Peter Cox?
It's great. I have the experience from last year. I was with Peter here as well, and we started from pole position. It's a very, very nice feeling, and the car is doing just excellent. So I'm still very hopeful for the race. You know?
I mean, officially you have to do 2 or 3 night laps. If it's a big job and you can't go out and do those night laps, can you get a dispensation from the organisers?
Well, I mean, everybody does some laps now here in the practicing, and in the race, all 4 of us will do night laps. Probably not a double stint like the professionals, but at least a single stint, that's for sure. You know? And well, a 24-hour race lasts for 24 hours, including the night, so that's what you have to go through.
Bernard, thank you very much. And as the car is You look around, it's actually being wheeled back in. It's a small leak. It's not. They seem to have found it and cut it off. They have to decide what the source was. It wasn't completely empty, or they would have stopped the car out on the track. So it's a minor leak, but beyond the control of either tie wraps or duct tape.
Essential items both in the engineering repertoire in GT and endurance racing. So we've still got an hour and 14 minutes to go. There's still at least a dozen or more, probably closer to 15 cars who the organisers are unhappy with. That is one of them that we are seeing at the moment. One of the Heiko Mercedes, and I can't see which one it is. That must be the 5 car, isn't it? That's the first one on the list.
5 is the Saudi Falcon.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, you're right.
6 is the
6. Yeah, excuse me.
16 is a.
You can see why you need a doing, because you've got not a chance of identifying that car out in the darkness. So fair play.
I mean, the reason they need those numbers on is not just so that we can see them, and the timekeepers don't need to worry about it because they've got transponders, but it's so the marshals can report back inappropriate driving, or if there's something that they need to report back, they have to be able to see which car it is that is causing the problem. So it's a bit like having a light on the back of your number plate, isn't it? I mean, it's
oh, do you need one of those, do you? The 18 Porsche is also transgressing that rule in the pits with the 21. One of the 997 Porsches in this race.
This is the first time they've run in the dark, isn't it? They didn't run yesterday, right. So it might be purely lack of proper testing, plugging it together properly.
Forgetfulness.
Finger
trouble. All of those things.
Air gap.
Yes. That one's barely on the Nissan. That was the GTR. That one's fine. You see, that's how it should look. Perfect. I do like some of the lampposts that are fitted to various of the cars. I did see
It's a rally. That's a rally set.
Yeah, there was a Porsche with a proper rally. Oh, hello. Now, that is the 17 car, and did I detect a bit of a problem on the right front of that car? So hard to see in the darkness. Now that's the Mercedes-Benz that's running around without. Ah, there it is. That's the 3 car now. That's now on.
See this side.
Yeah,
it's on both sides.
Yeah, I think the
further back than I expected to see.
The 3 is fine because that's the Black Falcon car, which is confusingly white. It's either the 6 or the 16.
White and red though, so that's good.
Yeah,
never a bad thing.
No black on it at all.
Yeah, indeed. And there is the 32 Champions Nissan, which, just in case you didn't know, that's Champions written on in foot tall letters on the back of it. At the moment, who's in that car? At the moment,
Michael Crum, it says on my screen.
Well, they do have driver transponders in the A6 cars, so we should be able to tell you who is driving. It's not the case for all the cars, in fairness, so when you join us for the race on Saturday, we may not always be able to tell you who's behind the wheel. Rather like the Nürburgring 24 hours, there are just too many cars to have, and drivers, to have individual transponders and frequencies for each of the drivers in each car. But I did see the thought that the organisers here at Preventic were hoping to get driver transponders for at least the A6 cars.
Fully up to 68 cars have made an appearance. So people getting in their 10 laps of running, or 8 laps of running, depending on if they have 4 or 5 drivers.
Sean Edwards in that Mercedes-Benz, really leaning on it through turn 1, and the telltale, and again there, look how low they're running the front of that car. That is the front edges of the splitter hitting the ground as the camber changes take effect. And, yeah, it's just unbelievable. Watch the front discs get hot at the end of the straight. Amazing to see how hard that car is being leaned on by Sean, very capable driver. Get the exhausts just behind the front wheels as well, coming out. I think they'd run all the way through to the back. Sean at the moment running around, that was a 2:05.7 for the car, and that was its best lap in darkness. But again, it's that balance, isn't it, gentlemen, between getting a time that everybody can do without going too quickly or indeed too slowly.
Yeah, I was talking to an engineer of racing cars recently who was describing how when you're doing setup, you kind of shave the peak of the car's performance off the top in order to widen the performance curve, if you will.
Yeah.
So rather than have a very peaky curve, which has got a very small area of optimum performance, you lower its performance and then widen, basically.
Flatten it down. Tap it down from the top.
And that makes the car easier to drive for a lot of people.
And in a race like this, outright performance, in endurance racing generally, but in this race specifically, is not necessarily your friend.
No.
Because there's no. I remember some years ago watching both Aston Martin and, as we see now, that's the first time we've had a good look at that Saka. Yeah, that's the 3-litre turbo diesel V6. That's very nice. Blackpool Promenade would love that. I remember seeing Aston Martin and Corvette trying different bodywork with a Le Mans test here. Actually, no, it was Pro-Dive with a Ferrari, not with an Aston Martin. That'll tell me how long ago it was. They were trying different bodywork on the car. It wasn't the quickest bodywork that they went for in the race, because although it was quick over a lap, some of the drivers, Enger doesn't care because he just throws the car at every corner, but not everyone can do that. And also, it's not comfortable to drive for 2 hours. It takes too much out of you.
Yeah. But what is, whilst we've got on to prototype racing, what is particularly the case in prototype racing is that you can't afford to get off that peak nowadays, and it takes an awful lot out of you, and it's quite hard to get onto that peak in prototype racing. And so, you know, you, as I say, you just can't afford to get rid of that peak, and you can't afford then to run anywhere off it, because it's so close at the top in endurance racing that...
We'll have a chat about that Saka in a little while, because it is an interesting car. But let's head down to the pit lane into the GT3 Racing pit. That is a team, not just a class here. It's the Dodge Viper, and Nick Damon is down there.
Scott, British GT champion, I believe, in this car.
Yes, British endurance, British GT. British anyway.
You're a champion, though, really counts. Now, we've entered the night practice with this, the old girl, as you refer to her. I have to say, I do like the way you've rigged up the headlamps at the front.
Yes, they do the job, actually.
Well, the thing is, this 24-hour night racing is not what the car was originally built for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, trying to... I must say that racing over in Dubai compared to racing in England at night is a lot easier anyway, because it is all right at night.
And the weather's much nicer. It is, but it's not Hill or Dubai. It's not much of a choice. Now, talk about the car, but I believe this is her last race, is that right?
Well, I don't know about the last race, but yes, it's the last race for a while. We're basically we're going to do the long-term endurance series this year. This one got quite a lot different to this one, really. And we're obviously there's big opposition from Mercedes and
So is that a car you're just buying in off a crate, or do you do a lot of work on it yourself?
Dodge and with the European agent for the Viper. And so we've had some input to the car, but it's
Of course, you can see up and down the pit lane here, the rivals, they're quite good, aren't they?
our rivals, well, definitely, for the non-Grand Stuff, we're not under any illusions of how competitive it is in our GT3.
Now, of course, for this race, you're in SP2, which is the not quite GT3. The cars are a bit older,
he's a good guy, is Aaron. That was he's had a decent season last year in the Endurance Championship, and good to see him. What he was talking about there, that project, the Dodge project, is very, very interesting indeed, because it's the first time that the factory in Detroit has been interested in going racing for some time. We know of the problems, Jim, that the American car industry has had. Corvette and GM have been steadfastly remaining in motorsport, and particularly in motorsport that pertains to things that you can win with on Monday and then sell, win with on Sunday and then sell on Monday. And I think it's good that Dodge is getting the urge back.
And it is more than an urge, it is a commitment. I know that you know Bill Adam, who worked with us on the American side last year, does a charity event every year, and one of the big contributors to that charity event is the CEO of Dodge, and he wanted to bring some of the new Vipers down to be used in that charity event because he is so excited about motorsports. He's caught the bug, and I look for big things from that in the very near future.
Bad news for that 3.6 engine GC, the Scirocco-shaped car. Nick Damon's put the models on them, Paul. That's out on the far side of the circuit. Looks like it's coming back on the end of the Toro.
Yes, I think I won't blame Nick entirely, because there were some commentators up here that were saying how good the reliability was earlier on as well.
Might have been us.
I suspect that's going to be something that we see more of. I can see where it is out on the circuit as well. It's around about turn 9, I think, turn 8, turn 9 area. Turn 8 it is on the circuit. And as far as I know, the regulations allow cars to be brought back to the garage area in the race situation as well. So you're not like at Le Mans, where if you stop on the circuit you have to bring it back using your own toolkit. The car can be brought back behind a rescue vehicle, and it looks, looking out there into the darkness, as if that is what is going to happen with that Porsche engine car. The Saka now featuring more strongly on the screens. We've got a shot of the rescue unit bringing that car back as well at the same time.
The 120 Nissan 370Z. That is the, I think that's the Nicky Maiden car. The 100 is the gamer car, and the 120 is...
The 120 is the Dickie Maiden car.
Yep.
The 100 is a gamer car, and the Champions car is the 32.
Al Masood behind the wheel of that car at this point. He's been out most of the session.
Yeah, Hamid is. I've been very impressed with how he's attacked his motor racing this year in both prototype and GT racing.
He did a bang-up job in the States.
Well, considering his debut was Lime Rock, there's no harder debut.
Rock on a rope.
And rock on a rope. And he took the car out right at the very beginning of the race. Managed to avoid the carnage, with some very much more experienced drivers did not. The season just got better from them, to be quite honest. Looking at the Saka again, this diesel engined car, which, as Nick rightly said, I think when he was talking to the team earlier in the week on RadioLeMans.com, has the look of an 80s sports prototype of it.
Only smaller.
Yeah, it's sort of like
almost like a Camel Lights car.
Yeah, or
even smaller than that.
A C2 car or a Sports 2000 with a roof.
I was going to say Radical with a roof.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what
it does. There is a bit of a look of a C2 about it. They were quite small things. It's a very interesting little project, and the guys. They normally runs with a Subaru 2-litre engine in it. They've backed this diesel engine in with 300 horsepower and 600 and lots of Newton meters of torque, which makes it, as a race car, it makes a really good tow vehicle as well.
Torque is your friend.
It tows its own trailer, which is really good. Halfway through this session, just over, and not the times accounting for anything, but the best lap times are all down in the 203 and 204 area, with the problematic, should I say, Lamborghini in the pit lane for some time now. Dennis Rotera brought it in. It's not yet left the 203-221. Sean Edwards, we saw peddling the Merc pretty quickly. Or that car at least, has done a 203.644. I have to say I didn't notice who mentioned it. And staying in the 203s, the number 9 Lamborghini. Now Ron Gotha is in that car at the moment, and a 203.783 for that car. Now all of a sudden, early on in this session, it was all spread out a bit, but once again, the top 20 separated by 5 seconds, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because, as you just said, there's no reason to go quickly. It's not like it matters for anything. You know, you don't even kind of have the pride. I mean, when it's a free practice session, there's a kind of a pride to being on the top of the list. But with night practice, there's not really even a huge amount of pride associated with being on the top of the list. I mean, there's always pride in anything if you're the fastest, I suppose. But it is interesting that they are doing this night practice at racing speeds, and presumably finding out a lot about the car's performance and all that type of thing as they're doing so.
And I think we're also seeing some race pace, and I think that is another important part of this night practice, is to see what race pace is going to be like with as much traffic. Where 69 cars have now made a call, have made turn laps. There's not 69 cars out there right now because there's plenty of cars on pit road, but it gives you another opportunity to work traffic at night, when it's much different with the lights than it is in the daylight.
And also it gives them an idea of tyre wear, doesn't it? Because
very important.
And fuel consumption, because you know, just going out and doing a couple of laps, just like your running was driving, isn't going to tell you anything about fuel consumption, whereas going at race pace is going to tell you about fuel consumption and tyre wear. So
the task in this session is much different. When it's a free practice session, we haven't qualified yet. So, like you said, there is a certain amount of pride in being the quickest. You're kind of sending a message. Here, everybody's working on race pace and that sort of stuff. So, being competitive, they're going to want to be quick, but they have an agenda that they need to fill, and that's work to the agenda, tick the boxes, make sure everything's done, make sure everybody's gotten their 2 laps, make sure the lights work, make sure all of the fuel consumption numbers match, because as the temperature drops and the air gets thicker, the fuel consumption is going to change. Same with the tire wear. As the temperature drops, the racetrack gets cooler, the tire wear is going to change. So there are lots of research to be done, and that can only be done if you're running, as Paul said, at a legitimate pace.
there's no rule, is there? He said, looking at the rules. Because the thing is, you guys have talked to more people than I've talked to, but the pit stop can be any length of time, can't it? You do your pit stop as quick as you can.
Oh yes. There's no. I don't think there's a minimum. No, that's what you're saying. It's not like it's going to be 90 seconds. No.
Exactly.
Everybody is talking about changing tyres when they change drivers. I don't think that, certainly at the sharp end of the field, I don't think there seems to be no advantage in double stinting the tyres.
Can they fuel and work on the car? No. Can they fuel and do tyres?
No, because the fuel stops down at the end.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
See?
Yeah. So they'll change their tyres while they do the driver change.
Correct.
Then they'll go to the tank to fuel up.
Yeah.
Or they may decide not to. I mean, depending on
how much fuel
they've got on board, they may say, look, we've done the driver, you've got enough fuel, go out and do a half an hour of driving, bring it back, go straight past the pit, go to the fuel, take on enough fuel to then do the other hour and a half, and you've done your 2 hours. I mean, I don't know if it's feasible, but it could work that way.
But wouldn't you only want to spend one trip at 25 miles an hour down pit lane as opposed to 2 trips during a stint?
Yes. And that's what somebody's got to work out.
Yeah.
Someone is sitting right now working out, or whether it's better to come in. Yeah, exactly. Somebody is also working out whether it's better to go and do half an hour, take whatever it is out of the tank, and fill it brimful, and then do the rest of the stint before you come in. Which way around is it?
Yes.
You spend less time filling the car up, but you've got to come down
25 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
For the entire length of pit lane?
40 clicks down the pit lane, in case you're wondering what we're talking about. The Hyco Motorsport Mercedes-Benz out on the circuit. This is the 16 car. Still can't see that right-hand number, start number light. Look at those brakes now. That's at the far end of the circuit.
There is a maximum of 4 people who are permitted to work on the car. You can have a free lollipop man and a free windscreen washer. But if a team member wants to read out data of the data, he's got to be one of the 4.
Right, so anybody who's plugging in,
but you can wipe the windscreen and hold the lollipop.
Fire extinguisher?
not required.
Not required.
No fueling.
The other end.
There are fire marshals in the pit because last year somebody brought a car in the pit lane.
Fire, that's right.
That was medium rare when he brought it in.
Well done, but
by the time he stopped it,
it was Pittsburgh.
69 out of the 71 cars we might have been expecting. There's the 3 car, no problem with that side number we saw earlier when Sean was in the car. Don't have to duck out of the way of the camera, it's a pit lane. That's the black Falcon Mercedes-Benz. Yeah, I think great. There was a very, very evocative colour actually. That's an oil company motor, and they used to run European touring cars and rally cars in that colour as well, in the red, white, and a little bit of black striping. And that's a 997. It's the Tsunami car.
Really dark blue.
Really dark. Black's all right, as long as it's got red with it. Now that is that not the car that we saw stranded earlier on, the 22 car?
I think so. No, 99. At the end of the tow road.
Now, Sean Edwards has just got out of the Black Falcon SLS and he's down in the pit lane, as we saw. Nick Damon has attached himself to the Mercedes-Benz end of things and can find out from Sean exactly what life is like out on the 3.5 miles of Dubai Autodrome.
How is night time? Obviously, the track and everywhere else.
It's not too bad actually. It's pretty good with this car. We got good lights in it, so it's not really too difficult. The only problem you've got is the slower traffic. There's not actually a huge amount out there compared to last year at the moment, but it's still difficult. You've got to be aware, you know, a lot of drivers are out there for the first time driving light, first time in a 24-hour race, so you've got to be aware not to crash, and obviously the night practice.
Now, I believe the fastest SLS in qualifying was down in 12th. Is that sandbagging tactics or a lack of pace?
Well, I don't know, but obviously you know the rules of this race, they're very different, you know. We've aimed for a 205, which is what we'll be doing in the race. We've got only 25 kilo ballast for that. Comparing to the Ferrari, they've got 75 kilos, 10 millimeters ride height, and 15 litres less fuel in the tank. So it's quite a big penalty to take. So we worked it out that if we can get that pace, I don't think they're going to be able to run as fast as that during the race. So, you know, if our strategy works, we should be winning.
I mean, of those 3 penalties, which is going to hurt the most?
I would say probably the fuel. I mean, the weight is a little bit of a disadvantage in a 24-hour race. Obviously, a little bit on lap time, but more on the fuel consumption and the wear on the brakes, and possibly they might have to do 2 pad changes. But definitely the biggest will be fuel, because we worked it out, maybe about 5 litres would be 1 extra pit stop during the whole race. So 15 is 3 extra pit stops, which is 10 or so minutes. So for them to gain 10 minutes back on the track is going to be pretty difficult.
I think you mentioned that time, the 24-hour race timings that they've probably done on the simulator race. Everyone needs to change the
I would guess so, yeah. It depends on the car, but normally you're going to have to change one set. This track is quite hard in race. It's not a huge, it's not like Le Mans, you know, where you have the long straights to cool them down, and then you know, most of the lap is flat. Here it's very stop-start, so I'm expecting at least 1 set of pad changes for everyone.
How much are the tactics changed by the fact you're not refueling at the pit, you're refueling at a petrol station where you have no idea how long the queue is?
Yeah, it becomes very difficult. You've got to have a team who's really on it with the fuel station. They've got to get there early.
make sure, you know, sometimes you might pit a couple of laps early just to get the free slot. Because if you lose, you know, 30 seconds, 1 minute in the pits is huge. And the strategy of this race, obviously the driver change is crucial because they're changing tyres. They're down 4 guns with 4 people. So their tyre change is around 10 to 12 seconds if they're doing it well. So we've got to get the driver change around that too, because every second we're slower on that, we're losing time on track, which is, as you know, very difficult to gain back at the end of the day.
Exactly. So as you stand here, practice virtually over, I think the 205 is definitely the correct way to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we worked out as being best for our car and, you know, comparing to the other cars. Obviously, this race is very different to anything else. Like Daytona 24 hours, which we're doing in 2 weeks, it's more of a flat-out race. There's no penalties for going fast. So here is all about strategy. It's a weird one. The rules are weird, but it's the same for everyone. And at the end of the day, you know, if you look at it, of course, last year they had, I think, 4 gentlemen drivers. They ran at 2:07 in qualifying. So they had 50 kilos less in the car, more fuel, and they finished second overall. Because obviously had just less time in the pits, which is crucial in a 24-hour race. So I'm confident of our strategy, and we'll have to see. Obviously, have no technical problems. As Kay stay out of the pits and hopefully be on the top step of the podium.
Sean, thank you very much. And quick general report from the pits, John. We're beginning to see some garages go down. Garage door goes down as something that's done more than Ryder has closed their garage door as well to work on their oil leak. And there is one unanswered question, and that's with all this refueling, who gets the nectar points?
Yeah, very good. Very good, Nick. Absolutely.
So is the 15 liters less on the refueling?
Yeah.
Not in the total
No.
capacity of the
Tanks
tank?
stay the same.
Okay,
Your
that's what I
tanks-
thought. I just wanted...
Your tank size.
That's what I understood. I just didn't...
Your tank size is set by the weight and the performance of the car, and
Yeah,
then it's how much you can refuel.
No, the tank size is set by what the car will take.
Ah.
So if the car, as a production car, takes 120 litres, then the tank size is 120 litres.
I
And
see.
120 litres is the maximum.
Oh, look, there you go. There is, in fact, a sticker on the car to tell you, thank you, Nick. Don't look so smug, to tell you how much you can get.
There's then a list, which I've got here.
Isn't it fun when they're listening to us?
Yeah.
There's a list which I've got here, which says how many litres you can take on at each refueling stop, which you can have, Jim. Basically, it's interesting. The Mercedes is allowed to take on 110 litres, whereas the Ferrari 458 Italia, if I hold my head there, you can read it, is only allowed to take 100, and they've taken a hit on that of less
15 litres.
Of 15 litres off it. So that's going to be 85
85
every stop. But they will be able to fill it to the brim at the start of the race. And that will be whatever the size of a Ferrari tank is, which I think is 120 litres. So, no, it is, as Sean was saying, a very different race. Whilst it is the same for everyone, it's one of those where you want to kind of find out what the impact of the decisions are that everybody else has made before you make your own decision. You know, and going back to Rob Bath's job, they decided that they wanted to. In fact, he admitted that he'd made the mistake, hadn't he, initially, which had pushed them into the higher performance category. And having made that mistake, they then said, okay, well,
might as well go for pole.
Having gone a 2 minutes 2 something, 2 minutes 2.5, we might as well do a 2 minutes 2.2, 2 minutes 2 point something very small. So you know, it's a funny way to go motor racing, but motor racing has always been about using the rules to your advantage, and you know, this is a great example of that.
Yeah, and also about getting the best out of, you know, the available resources. I mean, look at all through the years of multi classes at Le Mans, when there was even more classes than there are now, there was always the index of thermal efficiency and all of those things, and we've seen
index of performance.
We've seen it in the Group C era, which we all go misty-eyed about. But let's not forget, the Group C era for a lot of the time was a fuel formula.
Yeah, very much so.
The funny thing is, though, I know a lot of people who are suggesting that a fuel formula might be the way to go, not necessarily purely the amount of fuel, because the problem now, of course, is you've got different types of fuel with diesel and petrol delivering different power values, but by calorific value of the fuel and giving them, because what we're getting is the racing is so close, but the regulations are kind of now being criticised. Is the petrol to diesel balance right, or things like that? So it's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting problem brought about by the different objectives of the different organisations. Creventic very clearly wanting to make this an event that, whilst not being a handicap, can be won by other than the fastest car, what they regard as what made the best man win rather than the fastest car. The Le Mans organisers have a different agenda.
Well, it used to be with the LMP2 rules that it was, you had, here, the ultimate goal is to win the race. You can take this path with these rules, or you can take this path with these rules, and eventually you get it. Now LMP2 has been separated out, so there's really no chance for that to be, to have that ultimate goal of winning the overall race. But this is what I see, this is what you're doing here. You make the choice of what path you want to take. How do you want to, set up your car? What is the fueling that works best for you? What is the plan and the system that you can use to get to the finish line first?
Yeah, Paul Drayson mentioned many years ago, probably a couple of 3 years ago now, on Midweek Motorsport when we did an interview with them about using a calorific value and saying, here's the amount of energy you can use for the weekend, and basically, to use an American term, have at it. If you want to burn fossil fuel to that calorific value, on you go. If you want to do it with some kind of energy recovery system, that means that you can stretch that fossil fuel further. What type of fossil fuel? Isobutanol we've seen used in the American Le Mans series, etc., etc. And indeed, Paul Lord Drayson unveiled yesterday his electric endurance racing car. He's developed a set of motors for that lovely Lola Coupe that he was campaigning a couple of years ago. The internal combustion engine is out, electric motors are in, and he will be going out to set lap records on well-known circuits. Now, whether the car will be able to race in the what we term the traditional sense, in terms of being able to go out there and be competitive, is unlikely, because the battery technology at the moment just doesn't exist, and is not likely to exist for some time to give the longevity, unfortunately. But in terms of speed, with energy recovery systems on things like the dampers as well as the brakes, he's going to stretch that technology and make it work harder for him. And it's an interesting prospect. Do I think that all electric cars have a future? No, absolutely not. But as I'm with Doug Feehan of Corvette on this, they are part of the solution, they're not all of the solution.
Exactly. See, I agree with that. I think they're a methodology that has some merit. I don't think they're the ultimate.
But in everything that we've ever seen in transport, if you race it, it pushes technology forward.
In a positive way.
If you are being competitive with it, and if you're trying to get an advantage over someone else who's doing something similar, then it will drive it forward. And, the other thing is, it'll make it sexy. That's the other thing. Electric cars at the moment, aren't sexy. The world's biggest selling electric car looks like an egg crate, and, isn't properly green either, but that's a whole other thing. You see something like the Nissan Leaf RC, of which there are two here, it looks like a silhouette racing car sitting out the back. We were looking at it last night. That looks like a race car, and therefore it looks more interesting to the average man in the street, and therefore he's more interested in, it's more of a halo project, isn't it? Yeah. Not everybody goes into the dealership to buy the $100,000 sports car, but if it draws them in there in the first place and they buy the $20,000 5-seater family hatchback, then it's done its job. And that's what I say for electric racing. I think it's going to be there as a halo product for alternative fuels and alternative motive power. I'm just taking the soapbox away. I step off it. As you can see, we've still got
no rances yet.
I just wanted to say hydrogen.
I'm with you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm with you.
I think that's
I I have a colleague who's at work who's deeply into power in general, and he laid into me the other day when I was talking about electric racing cars, and went on about the cost of lithium and battery technology in general
And
is wiping out vast tracts of South America at a rate which is higher than anybody else is wiping out tracts of South America. And you hinted at it a minute ago, John, with the suggestion that it's not as green as you think it is. Electric batteries are the problem. It's not electricity per se, but it's the batteries, the way we do batteries at the moment. Not flywheels, flybrids. It's the batteries to store electricity, which is a cost to the environment that I don't think is sufficiently realised and recognised.
Yeah, and then you've got to transport it halfway across the world and make it into batteries. But anyway, let's leave that one for another day. We're watching a very much non-battery powered Audi R8 LMS with good old-fashioned internal combustion engine in it, and the glow from the exhaust. And that looks absolutely fantastic. And being a V10, of course, it sounds absolutely fantastic as well. As we're
even the officials are polite. Car 123, your transporter stopped working. Please fix it at your earliest convenience.
New set of Dunlops going out.
That's the Saka, isn't it?
Yes.
It is the Saka. The Dunlop, of course, providing all tyres for all the cars apart from the AS cars here, because they don't have a fitment on that car.
Well.
And then, in fact, I mentioned that car and it pops up.
Who is part of the Dunlop group?
Would that be Hoosier by some chance?
Well,
Goodyear. Oh, Goodyear.
Who owns Hoosier?
So it is part of the same group.
Yes, it is.
Well done.
So it might not be the same logo. The same mothership.
Okay, very good. I'm led to believe that there's a choice of two slicks and a single wet. There's no intermediates. Oops, that's enough for the Nissan GTR. No, excuse me, that's not the GTR. That's the NASCAR again. The black of the two NASCARs. That is very, very black car. It's the 107.
Very bad deal.
It is. I'm not sure about the fog lamps on the roof. I'm not sure how that's helping. But the other car, the red one...
You'll be able to pick it out.
Well, that's true. The other car, the red one, the other Ascar, the red car, has the most amazing headlights on. At least that one has got the headlights in the headlamp, where you normally have the decals. Stuck over the top of the other one are tiny little, almost like LEDs, which look fantastic. Not sure how they would work in the darkness. Looks like the sort of thing that you would have in your study, hanging over your desk. Now we've got just on 35 minutes left. Let's head back down to the pit lane. We spoke with Brian Highcotter, the American winner of the Nissan GT Academy earlier on today. Well, his European counterpart is the first British winner. Actually, he's a Welshman from Cardiff. Jan Mardenborough is with Nick Damon.
I've worked out that even though we talk about gentlemen drivers, you must be the least experienced person here.
Yeah, it's that way. Yeah, I've been racing since July. Not much experience in the car, but I've done a lot of races this year in the GT4 car and the SPA car, and I feel really good.
So you've done about 11 races for International C. I don't suppose many of these failed.
No way. This is the big one. This is my main prize for winning 2011 GT Academy, and I just can't wait to get started tomorrow.
Now, you've been out there, the car's parked, so you've done your night laps. What's it like travelling around this circuit at night?
I can see a lot more than I was expecting to anyway. Racing at Silverstone and Brands Hatch in the dark, yeah, it's quite a privilege because there's quite a lot of lights around. There's quite a lot of lights on the back straights and in the corners, so yeah, it's not as dark as I thought it would be. And yeah, we're pretty well night practice.
So you're saying that the Dubai Autodrome has slightly better lighting than Brands Hatch then?
Yes.
I mean, it is a remarkable story. You know, 6, 7 months ago, like many others you're sitting on your sofa. I mean, when you look at this, what are your targets for this race? Because this is where the prize ends, this is where it stops, and you need to drive your full-size career on from here.
Yeah, our main goal is to finish the race. There's a lot of important Nissan people here, a lot of people deciding the future and to crown me GT Academy champion. So all four of us, all the drivers want to put on a good show for Nissan, and we want to finish and finish well. So that's our main goal.
Have they set you, target lap times? We need you to be as fast as Lucas or as fast as Brian. I mean, what is that dynamic within the team?
They haven't set us target lap times ahead because they all know that we're all quick drivers. It's hard for a driver not to look at lap times and stuff, but I'm trying to get in the habit now early on to stop looking at the lap times and sort of think, oh, Lucas is 7/10 quicker than that last session, but you just can't think about that. It's a marathon, and we've got to finish the race, so we've got to look after the car and the tyres.
So as you look forward to your first 24-hour race, an international event, is there one thing that's worrying you? What's in the back of your mind thinking, ooh?
There's nothing really worrying me at all. I'm just going to focus on my part. It's a team effort. All the drivers got to do their thing when they're in the car. And I'm sure RGM Motorsport will do their bit in the pit stop as well. So as long as I do my part well, I'm happy.
Thanks very much. Excellent media training there, I have to say. Marvellous work by Jan indeed.
Fantastic, isn't it, Nick? I mean,
It's good.
Absolutely wonderful.
From the very first interview that we did with them and right the way through, I've been tremendously impressed with that.
You interviewed him on the phone and just came away blown away.
Yeah, absolutely. You were at that. You were at the house when I did that, weren't you? Yeah.
Yes.
That whole program, and obviously, we're the broadcast on RadioLeMans.com and on Motors is supported by Nissan this weekend. So you might say, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? But that whole program has been refined over the years since Lucas Ordonez won it. They've gone away. They have had a look at the strong parts of the program and strengthened them. They've had a look at the weaker parts of the program and put more effort into it, to the point where, as we said before, we kind of expect that kind of answer and that kind of performance from the guys in it. Paul?
I wonder to what extent, I mean, it was interesting that Nick picked up and said driver training or media training or something. It's my belief that that kind of thing isn't trained in. It can't, you're either of that personality or that kind of engaging personality that can do it, or you're not. And there's some people you can give all the media training you like to, and they're still not actually going to come over as an engaging, friendly personality. And I wonder to what extent what the GT Academy is about is not actually a driver training program, but it's a driver discovery program. There's a difference, yeah? There are people out there who have talents that they haven't yet discovered.
Yeah.
And the trick is to find them and put them in the hole that is their shape.
And the interesting thing about that is they're doing it in a non-conventional way.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what, and I don't think anybody at Nissan GT Academy would necessarily disagree with what you're saying there.
The reason being is that the pool of people that they are drawing it from is huge. Right. And that's why they're able to get good ones.
And because they are doing it a different way, it's compelling.
Yes.
So it attracts, from a marketing standpoint, because it is compelling, it attracts viewers, it attracts interest, and then the success. Like you said, yeah, people say, well, we're sponsored by them, so yeah, we would say that. No, we're saying that because Lucas Ordonez has finished well at Le Mans.
Stood on the podium.
Yeah, stood on the podium at Le Mans. The second winner was the...
Jordan Tresson won the Black Pump Championship last year,
was
GT4.
GT4 champion. So these guys have lived up to some really, really high expectations.
I'm with Paul on this. I think that, there are people out there. Motorsport, unfortunately, is a very difficult sport to get into. We've had this discussion on Radio Le Mans many times, have we not? It's not like you can pick up a ball or a bat or a racket or even a golf club and go out and your results ultimately speak for themselves. You can't do that in motorsport because there isn't a Mercedes-Benz SLS at the end of the street that you can go and take part in, or a kart track where you can get in front of the right people. It's going to take a considerable amount of finance more than anything else, as well as the dedication. Discovering these people's talents is part. I'm sure the guys at GT Academy, in fact I know the guys at GT Academy, as we see, one of the United Autosports Audis, looking for a pad change. Just to quickly finish off before we go back down to there, is the skill of that program, or the worth of that program, is identifying the right people and then ensuring that the people aren't just good at the tests, taking them on through the early parts of their career to develop them to a point whereby they can put them in a position and they can stand on their own 2 feet and go forward from there. And I think that is the real winning streak that the guys, and part of what they're doing in developing that program and developing the parts of that program, are there to refine that bit. But I'm with Paul. Discover it.
Yes.
Discover it.
Yeah.
Let's head down to United Autosports. We saw the 26 car in the pit lane getting a pad change. Matt Bell is in the pit lane. Big news for his bro today, being signed up as a McLaren works driver for McLaren GT3, which means he might come up against his brother sometime soon. Of course, the taller one's the better driver. Nick?
John Hindhaugh is just surmising that with the news about your brother, Rob Bell, becoming a McLaren driver, you'll be racing in this year, so you have more hair. Are you faster?
Well, I'm not going to break any barriers down with Bella just yet. I'd like to be. That's the aim, shall we just say.
Well, it's indisputable about the hair. Anyway, looking at the GT3 Audi, the R8, I mean, how's the day gone? We've been trying to button you around. We saw you getting pulled up the big a couple of times. Richard Dean working up this morning, trying to sort out some transgressions.
Well, we do like to keep Richard busy. No, they weren't mine. I haven't actually done all that much running today. We've just been familiar with the car, familiar with the track, just getting them as much track time as we possibly could. And I've just had quite a decent session there. But yeah, as I say, we like to keep Richard busy. Otherwise, he just sits and does nothing on the pit wall.
It's a nightmare. Race managers never want to do that. Now, looking at the field, it's a very odd situation. You and I used to race meetings when we were qualifying list, and Fred's top was his fastest, and Joe's third was his third fastest. But here, it's protected. Have you qualified exactly at the speed you want?
Well, we came in this race, as we have done in other 24-hour races, knowing that we might not necessarily have the ultimate car, so our aim was always to, throughout qualifying practices, just work on our race strategy, work on our race setup. So it was as quick as our race setup could go. I'd like to think if we put some qualifying setup on there, it would have been better. But we're happy with our pace, we're happy with our race pace, we're happy with all four pretty consistent times through the race. So it's just going to be a case of going out there, keeping it consistent, staying on trouble, and being good in the pit lane.
Is the R8 a friendly car to drive in a multi-class, massively mixed field?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, I've just been out there, taking on the car, our headlights are pretty good, so it's nice. The car is very easy to drive, it's comfortable to drive. It's pretty good on its tyres, which we're lucky with as well, obviously. It's a key factor here, particularly when it's going through today. It's a good choice.
Now, do you have those magic Audi headlights they have at Le Mans, where if you flash them 10 times, all the cars disappear in front of you?
Sadly not, no, but they're pretty good. They're certainly better than most cars.
Thank you, best luck for the rest of the weekend. And I think he's had a good chance of racing his brother. Battle of the Skunks for you.
Yeah, both Newcastle United supporters, and if you get to see Matt's helmet, you'll see it's full of black and white stripes. Now, just
Ugly thing.
a few moments ago on the front straight, going past a couple of battles. Oh, and that was I think that was a little earlier on as well, a little off-track excursion for the 101 Viper. And
Paul has some Thomas Enger news.
ah, yes.
Yeah, so I just came up a little while ago. Thomas Enger, not a little while ago, as in very long ago, just a matter of 5 minutes or so ago, Thomas Enger setting the fastest lap of the session. We've not really been talking about times at all, as they don't count for anything in this particular night session. But I think Thomas Enger setting the fastest lap by a second. I mean, not just a little bit quicker than anybody else. 2 minutes 2.219. I think it was 2 successive laps, wasn't it, Jim?
Yes.
We were looking at them.
And they got to be really close to his bogey time, if not under his bogey time.
Well, of course.
That's the thing that caught my attention.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
of course,
near the pole time.
Of course, now it doesn't matter at all because it's the qualifying lap which counts towards assessing what your bogey time is. During night practice, it doesn't matter at all. So Thomas Enger then 2 laps under the or faster than anybody else in the number 15 car, and so he can go to bed satisfied with the job that he's done tonight. Thomas at the wheel of the Gravity Mercedes SLS AMG. No sign yet of any return of the Reiter Engineering Lamborghini, that car which went into the pits. Its pit garage, if you think about an hour ago now, with some kind of oil leak. Nick reported that the garage door had been closed, but he also reported, unless I misheard him, that they were working on it behind the closed door. So, being the optimist that I am, I'm hoping that it will come out
Probably
again.
Just prep for tomorrow.
Well, it's either that or because the problem is they haven't done all their drivers. So if they can fix the oil leak, then they ought to, in order to qualify the drivers. I think, who was it? It was Bernard Muller, wasn't he was talking to? He kind of misunderstood the question, either deliberately or otherwise, when Nick asked him about whether that had any impact on qualifying the drivers for night racing. He started talking about driving at night, which I don't think was quite what Nick was trying to get at with his question. So there is the question. It does say in the regulations that you do have to complete 2 laps at night. Whether the drivers will go out in another car to do their qualification laps, or whether they'll be given dispensation to drive despite not having done their laps.
Would it come out another car?
Well, that was my question. I don't know if they can or not. It's the sort of thing that I don't know any of the Creventic organisers in a personal way, but by character, they would say, if you're concerned about driving at night and you'd like to go out in another car and you can arrange it, then we won't object. It's the type of thing I would expect to happen. But as I say, it may be that they've been working on the car and they'll be able to get it out, because it only takes a couple of minutes to do a lap. So if you've only got to do 2 laps with each driver, there's certainly time for that yet. We've got 20 minutes of the session remaining still.
The 115 Ginetta has attracted the attention of the race officials, and unfortunately it's in a bad way because the rear lights aren't working. Nick's down at the pit.
It wasn't non-working gear light, it was non-working lights. It didn't seem to affect the lap time, so I just closed my eyes, looked normal, so it's fine.
That's right. So how, apart from the electrical failure, I mean, how is the Ginetta G50 around here as well?
It's good. I mean, we've driven it with really bad lights 2 years ago. Now we've got good lights. They're not perfect. They seem to be angled better. But it's good. I like driving in the dark. It's a really different experience. So.
Now, this is a proper little race car, a car we see going around the tracks of the UK, supporting touring cars and its own series. But that's very different from the 24-hour racing. So, what changes do you have to make, apart from the lights, so it can last that very difficult length of time?
Well, we're our 3rd year trying here. So maybe you should ask that on Saturday afternoon, but I think we're getting much closer. Major thing is, we run this car in Asia. So we do sprint races in Asia. And the major thing is it overheats as you insulate. So this year we've done a huge amount of insulation. We've actually put in a different vehicle. So the originals were running with a Quave, which isn't as resilient. So I hope that this year we've learned enough to get it right.
So it's a big job getting the car ready, and of course you'll battle 72 other cars, I assume, of which what, 55, 60 are quicker than you? with that one.
Well, that's a success story, isn't it, Ginetta? A brand that could well have disappeared a few years ago. Martin Pfaff did a tremendous job to take it back from the brink. I remember the Pentel Ginetta race days that he managed to put together with some celebrities. Shane Lynch, Boyzone star, and very nearly won the British GT Championship, actually. Now goes to compete in drifting competitions. He cut his teeth in the Pentel Ginettas, in the open top cars, and then of course taking on that flame that Martin Pfaff managed to keep alight by Lawrence Tomlinson and LNT, and to the point now where that car there and its descendants, because it has spurred a number of other cars, are a very, very cost-effective way of going racing, Paul.
Well, we were talking about a different sort of academy. Well, there is now a Ginetta Academy as well. Absolutely. These days, isn't there? Where I'm going to be corrected by people who know more than me about this category, but there's a Ginetta Junior Racing where underage drivers can compete in the UK now, which I think is for 14, 15-year-olds.
You've got to be 14 at the start of the season, yeah.
Yeah. And it seems to be getting good grits.
Well, that used to be the G20, but now there's a new Ginetta Junior car that was built especially for that.
Specific car, isn't it? You know, there is then an academy that you can grow from one type of Ginetta racing into another type of Ginetta racing, and it all ends up with you know, more people looking at sports car racing. You know, no longer do people say motor racing and think Formula One. They say motor racing and there's other things on the plate.
And what we were just hearing about there was an inordinate amount of these cars don't just go into single make championships, they go out to Asia, they go out to the Far East to run in national championship. The base model car is something like 40,000 euros, maybe a little more. Lawrence Tomlinson will be telling me I'm giving everybody discounts, which I apologise for, LT, if I am. But there is a variety of specifications that you can add to things like a bigger tank, air jacks for things like endurance racing. Yes, they add a little bit to the price, but still, it's not the price of a Ferrari or an Aston Martin or a Porsche. Now, you might well say, yeah, but the Ginetta brand maybe doesn't have the cachet of those really luxury brands of cars. But doesn't that make it all the more sweet when you go out and beat them when you're running in GT4 or something like that?
Exactly. And last June, Joe Bradley took me to Croft, and it was the first time I got to see a bunch of Ginettas in Ginetta Juniors, which was very cool. I mean,
G50s, G6, G55s,
and then the G55s in a one-make series. It was fantastic racing, and they look great, they sound great. They're sports cars.
You know, we had that discussion about crate motors the other night. Effectively, that G50 runs with a Ford V6 crate motor that normally goes into a minivan or an SUV. It's a V6. It's pretty much... we've got a code 60 for the first time.
A little code 60 practice.
I wonder if this is for a practice, yes.
I thought it might be for a practice, yes.
Well, there was a bit of overtaking went on the start-finish straight, for which people will be getting told.
Right now.
Yes, let's see them as they come through. So that means... Now, one of the safety cars has been scrambled. Still no lights on cars 6, 16 and 51. And let's see if people are beginning to realise what goes on as they go through. I'm trying to look to see the start of the slower cars coming around on the far side of the circuit, coming into turns 4 and 5, and it's beginning to happen. So clearly it was.
Well,
there was one or two people
even
who
here
kept
in front of us now, they're slower.
Yeah, I could see one or two people rather too quickly across the start-finish line, and I'm sure by accident overtook cars that were going slower in front of them.
It depends a little bit, John, not to polish your soapbox up, but it depends how good the marshals are in getting the purple flags out simultaneously as well, doesn't it? Because that's the crucial part of it. The drivers don't have timing screens in their cars.
See, like that?
Yes.
Now, that was one of the GC cars that's just gone past at full bore with a BMW E46 in the middle of the track doing 60 clicks.
And that was probably 60 kilometres an hour, wasn't
it?
Yes, it
was. He was being very assiduous on that. Now that does kind of worry me. The guys need to sharpen up a little bit. But on the far side of the circuit now, we can see a whole crocodile of cars keeping their distance from the cars in front. There is an intervention vehicle out there as well, with flashing lights on, which is going through the field. That does, I suppose that does give the advantage to if you need to get to an incident without having to red flag the race. We are hearing from race control, by the way, that as we surmised, this is just a test.
I thought the whole point was that you don't get a crocodile forming.
I think they've put the safety car out to just remind everybody. Well, ultimately, I suppose, if it only comes out at the start line first, then eventually you will get everybody slowed at the start line. But as you say, you shouldn't get a crocodile. There'll be cars at different parts of the track. Now, there is a Porsche number 43 coming down the hill towards turn number 16, and he's in splendid isolation. He's doing his 60 clicks, but there's nobody anywhere near him, and that's what I'd expect to see, Jim, to be honest.
And I think that there was
here's another one here. Yeah.
And I think there was a group on the front straightaway anyway, and that's why it looks a little bit like a crocodile.
There's also one of the Porsche 997s, and he's, a couple of hundred metres behind the last one I mentioned, but he's neither gaining nor losing.
Yep.
So that kind of works for me.
Yeah, the theory is that all marshals posts simultaneously wave purple flags.
Yeah.
And so it's not just at the start line, it's all around the circuit.
So you have to sort of go on the marshal's net, 3, 2, 1,
go. Yeah. Which is, I think, the crux on which the whole principle stands or falls from this demonstration of it, at least.
Well, at least everybody's had a chance to have a look.
And of course, drivers paying attention to it.
Yeah.
If you're in the middle of a battle. The good news is, for using it at this circuit, and I do think I'm speaking to guys who have had this before, this circuit particularly works well because you've got a nice, long, wide front straight. So if you have driven past 3 cars that are crawling along, you think to yourself, hang on, that's not right. And then if you've missed the lights, you've got the purple flags rather, you've got the chance then to say to yourself, oh, hello.
Position.
Yeah, exactly. Remember, as Paul was telling us earlier in the week on RadioLeMans.com, that the penalties for this is a drive-through with the stationary part of the drive-through equivalent to twice.
No, that's the penalty
for fast laps.
For fast laps.
Right.
The penalty for this is clerk of the course. At the clerk of course's discretion, with a time penalty of 1 minute.
Well, it needs to be draconian, because if people are taking the meat out of it, then it clearly, the whole point of it is not to have anybody disadvantaged.
Less than 10 minutes now remaining in the session.
Yeah, the time penalty is at least 10 seconds, and the clerk of the course can increase this time penalty with the double value of the encountered advantage when driving too fast. Well, how do you work that out? I have no idea.
Well, they'll know how much quicker than 60 mile an hour average they did over at least a lap. So that is an absolute.
Yep.
Because there is a set time which, as everybody goes through, their last lap should be all pretty much within a second or two of each other, shouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's going to be...
I'm sure there's a little bit of a fudge factor, but...
Yeah, it's going to be about 8 minutes or something, isn't it?
You can work it out, can't you? It's 5.3 kilometres round, and it's 5.3 kilometres at 60 kilometres an hour, isn't it?
Oh, yes, I was going to try and do it in miles there. That wouldn't have happened. So we have the session neutralised for a practice of code 60, which generally speaking seems to have been. And the green flag is already waving as the Saka is in the pit lane because the transponder has been a problem. Now, green flags will have to wave everywhere so that everybody gets back up to speed at the same time. You do not want to be caught dozing, having not lost or gained any problem any times. You don't want to be caught dozing when everything goes back to green. Paul's doing base 60 maths with kilometres. Magic. Wow. That's why we flew it here. So we have 7.5 minutes or thereabouts before the end of this session. Those of you watching on Motors TV, we will be knocking off the live broadcast relatively quickly. And we'll have a couple of minutes here on RadioLeMans.com just to wrap up. Now, whilst we have the opportunity, let's get down into the pit lane for a bit of glamour. No, not Nick Damon, it's the Racing Divas.
Oh, you've upset me there. I thought I was the glamour. I am with 2/5, 40%. See, I can do maths as well, of the Racing Divas. And I'll let them introduce themselves. Madame, you are? So give us a bit of a background to the car. You're with a Renault Clio. It's got pink hearts. How come you're here and what is your experience?
We are here because Simon actually thought of an idea to get a ladies' team together for the 24-hour race. And at the moment, you know, with the economics, the world is very difficult, so we decided to sell hearts. Every heart costs 500 euros. One car has about 100 hearts on it. That's how we got the budget.
So what sort of companies and friends have bought hearts?
Yeah, the friends and companies and people want to give you the chance to do your thing on the 24 Dubai.
How much have you enjoyed the experience so far yesterday? Is it everything you expected?
We are with 5 ladies, and 2 of them have drove here before. And for 3 of us, it's the first time here, but it's a great experience.
What racing experience do you have back home?
I've been 4 times Dutch champion. So there are another lady and 2 ladies who had a Dutch champion in the pocket, so we can drive also very fast.
Are you also a champion?
Twice too.
Showing off. So, 5 ladies, 1 car. Do you all want the same things? Do you get on the same way, or is it a bit of friction?
We are 5 ladies, so sometimes there are difficulties, but we all want the same thing. The first thing is to finish, and hopefully on the podium as well. So.
I mean, you're in a class. There are a couple other Renault Clios out there, so you could actually attack those cars themselves, can't you?
Yeah, there are a few Renault Clios, some minis. I think there's about 9 or 10 cars in our class, so
We wish you the best of luck. Your car looks great, and you are by far the most attractive team. So without any fear or favours, and good luck for the rest of the weekend. More ladies. 4 ladies. 5th lady, unfortunately, is still on the track job. Can't get her.
Yeah, leave quickly now, Nick. Seems like his barren patch has ended then. Nick Damon down there in the pit lane, proving that the twinkle still works. The spirit of Graham Tyler lives on. And
is Mrs. Damon watching from home, do you think?
There's no Mrs. Damon at the moment.
Oh, isn't there?
No.
Oh, see, I'm not in touch.
The spirit of Fingers and the twinkleness of Fingers lives on.
Never men are the same the world over.
Oh, yeah. So, last 5 minutes or thereabouts.
We've gotten a little less polite. We're getting tired of the 123 car. Instead of fixing at your own convenience, please fix.
Yes. Yeah.
Or please fix soonest. Now it has become please fix.
Yeah. 6, 16 and 51. No start numbers lit up still. So that's been for the whole session, actually. So, last chance for anybody to get in.
Smaller.
Yes. Last chance for anybody to get in here. And I'm actually quite surprised, but pleasantly so, gentlemen, at how many people have decided to do the full session or have made use of most of the session. As Nick said earlier, there's a smattering of garage doors gone down, but ultimately, Paul, it seems as though most people have taken the option of using the track time.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it is about using the track time to become familiar, and also because it's fun. These are enthusiasts.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for this part of the broadcast. We're back with Motors TV, of course, across the weekend, and the whole of every session on RadioLeMans.com. We'll be staying live on the international feed of RadioLeMans.com for the end of the session and some summary. But let's go back down to the pit lane and to Nick Damon to wrap things up for our TV colleagues.
Well, it's been a fantastic and very, very busy day here in Dubai for the Dunlop 24 hours. But the big event, obviously, is tomorrow, and that starts at 9 o'clock UK, or 10 o'clock the transmission in CET. And we will be bringing you the first 3 hours of the race and regular comebacks at Motor. Don't forget the entire race is on Radio Le Mans, which is set to be quite one of the most spectacular endurance races ever, with tactics and timing and 26 cars that can possibly win. Don't miss it.